16 years ago, I was the fastest miler in the world for a season. Laps of the track were part of my day-to-day routine, and speed came relatively naturally. You might never have run an all-out mile or kilometre, but for me, it was my life for over 10 years. Get quicker, be more efficient, push the line, and then go even further. And now, 16 years later, I run much less, I'm a dad of 3, and my day job doesn't involve running around in circles anymore. I couldn't feel further from the athlete that I used to be. But when Mizuno called me and asked me if I'd like to run a 1K time trial in a real race in their brand new super shoe, the Rebellion Pro 2, then part of me got really excited. Andy, the professional runner, came alive again, and I really don't want to let him down. More and more terrified the closer it gets to the start time. The last thing I did in competition was a marathon, and now I'm doing the total other end of the spectrum, 1K. Weirdly, not used to having a camera crew follow me around for this stuff. That's adding so much more pressure. I am not feeling fresh. All of this, I'm talking myself out of it already. This is the main psychology when I was racing, never talk yourself out of it. There's a lot more reasons I run well than reasons I run badly. Just don't know whether that's true, so I'm now doubting myself. Race day, it's all coming back to me. Preparing for a race like this starts a few weeks beforehand as I start to visualize what's going to happen when I get to the event. What does the course look like? And then I'm also imagining myself in the race, what it's going to feel like. And for me this time around, it involved thinking about a racing environment that I hadn't put myself in for 8 years. Being back surrounded by the real top end of the athletes in the sport in the UK was absolutely terrifying, so I was trying to get my head around that. These guys are lapping about as fast as I'm going to do my 1 lap.
How do you feel about that?
Not good. The massive difference between now and how I used to train as an elite is back then I was running 12 times a week, 3 gym sessions, I was fitting in physio and rehab and all that other stuff. Whereas now, the busy bits of my life are the rest of my life, my family and my work. And so I've only really been able to do 3 or 4 runs a week plus a little bit of gym. So I have to get quality where I can. And I've actually been repeating some of my old workouts from my former life.
Which ones are you racing in?
These, the Rebellion Pro 2. The worst thing before a race for me is the waiting. And then once I can start my warm-up routine as I get closer to the race, that's when the nerves gradually start to fall away. They never disappear for me. I run my best when I'm nervous. I feel like I need to be on edge to run well. And with an hour to go, that's when I start to go through my warm-up routine. I do a little bit of foam rolling, and also I've got a lacrosse ball to do some activations or loosen off some tight areas that I have. And then I'll be pinning on my number, making sure that that's overly perfect because I worry about those little things. And focusing in on the details like that allow me to distract myself from what's about to come. So I had someone just demonstrate their faith in me then. They asked me how fast I was going to go. I gave them a ballpark, said maybe around 250, and they sort of shook their head and went slower.
If you win, Andy, could we have a little, can we split money?
If I win, I'll split money with everybody.
Thank you.
Because I'm obviously not going to win. Then I'll go out and I'll start a gentle jog. In this case, we had the access to the circuit, which was really cool to be able to get a full lap in to try and visualize exactly how far 200 meters, 400 meters, and then halfway was in this 1K lap. It's about 4-minute pace, that'll do, won't it? After I'd done about a 15-minute jog, then I started doing my drills and some activations and some various movements in order to get fully warmed up. Then I put my race shoes on and I started to do some hard strides. And then those strides got longer and longer until my longest stride would have been about 30 seconds at as close to race pace as I thought I could manage. Where I'd been doing my warm-up was actually pretty quiet, but where the start line was, which was also the finish line, was lined either sides with fans and other athletes who are watching, as well as the commentators who recognised me from my previous life.
Andy Bradley prowling, Beijing Olympian in 2008.
All of a sudden it started to become real, and it was only going to be a few minutes before I was back on that start line again. Pre-race superstitions, 1, pinning my number on perfectly. That was something that I was always really obsessive about. Then making sure that I don't take my kit off until the very last minute, particularly when it was cold. Not really a superstition, but I always like to keep my leggings and my jacket on until as late as possible so that I could keep that warmth in. Then I always do 4 strides, always 4. And it used to freak me out if I was going to have to end up doing 3 because my warm-up was getting short. You've got to be as flexible as you can in these situations, but things were going well for me if I could get those 4 done. The closer it gets to my start time, the more I'm trying to dial in my feelings and thoughts to exactly what's going to happen and what I need to do to execute the best possible race that I can. The strange thing about a K or a mile, the really short races, is you don't have any time to make a mistake, and that's the thing I'm often most nervous about. So you need to be ready from the off to hit the pace perfectly from the beginning, not go too fast because then you're going to pay for it later on, but also not to go too slow because you don't want to leave any time out there on the track. I was surprised that I felt exactly the same emotions and feelings that I experienced 8, 10, 15 years ago at competitions at the highest level. I felt the nerves, but then the closer it gets to start time for me, the nerves start to get overtaken by excitement. And actually, as I got my name called and I knew it was only about 30 seconds until I was going to go, I felt much calmer all of a sudden. There was nothing left for me to do in my preparation. Just get on the line, get ready, and then go.
Olympian Andy Badley, winner of the 3 mile, is next up. 20 seconds to go, what are your last words?
Terrified. I've done this in so long. And I could see people who were much faster, much fitter, much younger than me, and that was intimidating.
Well, next up to start in around about 20 seconds is this guy.
I was just worried that I didn't belong there anymore and that I shouldn't be on this start line. Maybe I didn't deserve it. So I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. I just wanted to get out there and see what I could do.
Andy Badley, Beijing Olympian, in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
And then just like that, it was time to go.
Andy Badley is your man. He says he hopes he's at around about 2:40 pace. He's testing some new Mizuno shoes today as well, I think.
This time around, I got off the start line, and then the first bend was a sweeping bend, slightly uphill on a pretty flat course, but still pretty challenging. This is where all of the fans were there, leaning over the barriers, the coaches, the athletes, the families, the noise, the live bands. So I knew I was going to get carried away, and that's exactly what happened. I was trying to hold myself back a little bit, but at the same time, for me, at this sort of effort, it's essentially my max, so it's everything that I've got. And the adrenaline gave me such a lift that I wasn't looking at my watch, but I knew I was running fast. My last professional race was pre-super shoes, so starting a race at this pace in super shoes, getting straight off the line and immediately having that energy return is something that I've not experienced in that environment. So it was an incredible way of getting straight up to pace and then just hoping that I'd be able to hold that the whole way. The second quarter was the long straight that swooped slightly down. It's an ever so slight, but enough to feel like you could really gather that momentum. And I was hyper aware of the fact that this was going to lead me up to the halfway point, and I was already starting to feel the lactate building in my legs. The level of fatigue was something I hadn't experienced for years and years because it's a totally different feeling. You can almost start to taste it because you're immediately working anaerobically. And for me, I was straight outside my comfort zone much earlier than I would have been in my career. But there were still enough people around that I kept rolling. I just kept on thinking about staying nice and tall and focusing on good running form in that second quarter. An all-out effort in a shorter distance, so probably anything from 5K down, feels hard for a lot of the race, and you sort of need to embrace that pain in the mental preparation beforehand to know that it's actually going to hurt if you want to run your absolute max. I was at my max speed, I couldn't physically go any faster, and it was just going to be a case of whether I had the speed endurance to maintain that. In that third quarter, if you don't push harder and dig deep and go to 10 out of 10, then you will slow down. There's just nothing to do about it. Into the last 250 meters, I'm visualizing an actual running track because I know exactly what that feels like. I know how far it is to get from point A to point B. And it also happens to be the bit where the crowd started to cheer and you can just about see the finish gantry. That's an amount of time that I knew I could push hard for. The finish line's in sight.
He's still got it. This is proving that muscle memory does work.
The last 5 or 10 seconds was almost like coming up from underwater. I could then all of a sudden hear crystal clear the commentators and what they were saying and the time that they were reading out. And I knew it was faster than I'd been anticipating.
But Andy Badley, a very respectful run here. He's going to be way under his target of 2:40. He's driving for the line.
Come on, Badley, to the line. Still got it.
In those last few seconds, I remembered all of a sudden what it had felt like to put a consistent block of training together where every single element of what you did was aimed at that one moment in time and it all coming together. There's so much lactic. About 2:37 in. 2:39, you took me out of 2 seconds.
If I win that, you say give me the jet. I think he said that, yeah.
2:39. I'll take that. I do miss this. That's in a weird way. I miss finishing. The last 100 meters was amazing. Looking back at the times I used to be able to run, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that I achieved that, especially when I saw the athletes running at those kind of paces at the weekend. And I almost couldn't believe that I previously was able to run that fast. So I'm miles behind that now. and there are some inspirational people out there that I love watching, but seeing an athlete who's worked incredibly hard at full flow at something as fast as a 1K time trial is magical. There's a part of an athlete that never stops, regardless of age or pace. The drive to improve regardless of whatever that might mean to you, to push yourself as far as you can go. I went as hard as I could possibly go today, but I still can't help feeling that there might be more in there. So at the risk of putting myself in trouble, what do you think? Should I do another one? What should my challenge be?